Hey everyone, and welcome back to another max velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we're going over the extreme tornado outbreak that could end up occurring across areas in the United States today. I'll give you the latest breakdown on timing, details, everything that you need to know will be in this forecast. But let's first begin with the overall infrared imagery this morning, kind of give you an idea of what the setup is heading into later today. So really to begin, we have a trough that is back up in Canada. It's way off to the north, but this is what's actually going to end up bringing severe weather to areas in the south and southeast across areas like the Dixie Valley as well. So really it's a cold front that's extending from Canada all the way back through Texas this morning, and once this cold front moves just a little bit further to the east, we'll begin to have some severe weather developing later this afternoon. So very important that you keep a close eye on the skies if you're down in the south and southeast today. All right, overall severe weather potential for today hasn't changed drastically from yesterday's forecast. The biggest change is really where the moderate risk is. It has shifted slightly further to the south. It is also slightly more confined. It's not nearly as large as it was initially, but that does not mean you should just, blow this off by any means. There is going to be an extreme threat for tornadoes. We're talking the potential for violent, long track tornadoes is possible to the setup that we have. So overall, moderate threat primarily includes central Mississippi back into eastern and northeastern portions of Louisiana. There's an enhanced risk that does include basically everywhere where the moderate risk was yesterday, but it does go from extreme eastern Texas back through about southern Tennessee. So again, make sure you have a way to receive alerts today. There is still a slight risk, so you should still be mindful if you're outside of that, even that enhanced risk. We're still going to have that potential for maybe a few tornadoes outside of that enhanced risk. Might even see some damaging winds, even the potential for large hail as well. I'll get to that here in just a second. This is the tornado potential for today. So our most significant threat is in this hatched area. That's going to be including northeast Louisiana, eastern and southeastern Arkansas, southern Tennessee, goes all the way back through extreme western portions of Alabama as those storms continue to develop really this afternoon into the evening hours. The red shaded area is going to represent your 15% probability of a tornado within a 25-mile radius. So our greatest tornado potential will be across areas in central Mississippi. Big development from yesterday. There actually is now a significant hail potential today. This would be a 30% chance within a 25-mile radius. It does include areas across Mississippi back into East Texas. That hatched area represents your potential for 2-inch diameter hail or greater is possible today. So make sure that you are protecting your vehicle, as again, some extreme hail is possible today. All right, overall tomorrow, there's a little bit of a change into tomorrow. The marginal threat not nearly as large as initially thought, but it will include areas from South Carolina back through Louisiana. This will primarily just be very isolated damaging winds. Isolated tornado or two are not impossible heading into tomorrow morning. So just a heads up, the further east you go into tomorrow, there is still a possibility for a little bit of severe weather. Now, if you want a full breakdown on the severe weather setup, I have it in my yesterday's video. Not a whole lot has changed, so make sure to check that video out if you want a full breakdown on the severe weather setup. We'll talk about the timing here in just a second, but before we get to that, let's talk about the tornado parameter. This gives us an idea of where our most significant tornado threat will be today, and really these reds, these oranges, the pinks are representing your greatest tornado potential for today. So if we go around 5-6 o'clock this evening, really the highest threat is going to be across areas in really where that moderate threat is. It's going to include about eastern and northeastern portions of Louisiana back through central Mississippi is where that greatest threat will be. By about midnight tonight, we'll still have a possibility for a couple of tornadoes. It might become a QLCS situation, which means we'll have a line of storms that might produce a couple of embedded brief tornadoes, but at this point, not seeing a whole lot after that. It seems like that tornado threat will quickly diminish going into the overnight hours. So this will primarily be an afternoon, evening threat, maybe a very brief overnight threat. Let's begin with Louisiana in terms of timing. We'll have storms firing up as early as this afternoon, really as early as noontime. So right around lunchtime, Monroe is going to start to see a couple of storms out that direction. Could have some developing back down near Baton Rouge. By 2 to 3 o'clock, storms will really start firing up by then. All these storms are going to be moving off to the north and east. We could see a couple of these storms rotating as well as early as, again, really 1 o'clock. We have the setup already in place. So really it's just a matter of time until we start to see a couple of these tornadic cells. By 5 to 6 o'clock, things will start to dry out across a good portion of the state. But by the evening hours, more storms will fire up. These could also produce a potential for a tornado threat. And by about 1 o'clock, we'll have more of a line of storms develop. So that will really translate to more of a QLCS situation, as I mentioned before, which means an isolated brief tornado is not impossible embedded in that line. Over in Arkansas, about 11-12 o'clock, storms will fire up. I don't expect nearly as much severe weather in Arkansas unless you're on the extreme eastern half of the state. So by 3 to 4 o'clock, some storm activity back down near Greenville, for example, and back southeast of Pine Bluff. So that's the area where any tornado threat may exist here across the state. Now, the biggest area, the hot spot for today in terms of a tornado threat, will be Mississippi. Storms will fire up really as early as 11-12 o'clock. A lot of it will be really non-severe, but by the afternoon hours, we could have some showers and storms develop, and you can kind of look here and see a little bit of these hooks on the future radar. That would indicate some of these cells that could end up potentially rotating and producing that tornado potential. So be mindful of that. Again, storms will definitely be rotating out there, even though it looks like a very messy setup. By 5 to 6 o'clock, we'll have storms really going through central Mississippi. By about 8-9 o'clock, again, some hail is also possible with this, but by 9 o'clock, this will become more of a clustered situation, then eventually towards a QLCS situation. Eventually by midnight to 1 in the morning, more storm activity will be really just turning into a line, which will turn into more of a damaging wind and maybe isolated hail threat with an embedded tornado threat existing as well. And there is a potential for severe weather actually back up through areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as even as far north as Indiana. Really is not that significant of a threat. Just be mindful of if you're up in these areas. Isolated damaging winds, isolated tornado threat are possible. Just a quick little glance at the timing. We're not going to see anything too crazy up here, but an isolated brief tornado is not impossible west of Nashville. But other than that, just a lot of rain. Could even see a little bit of isolated flash flooding out of this as well. And just to give you a heads up, I will unfortunately not be able to be live today. I have a lot of exams coming up. I actually have 4 exams this week, and they're all stacked up together. So unfortunately, I have really no time to be able to go live. However, make sure to stay updated with your local National Weather Service, and you'll be safe today as long as you have a way to receive alerts. Make sure to hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you've not already. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting.